Hello, Hub City kids. How are you doing today? How was your week? You can name something good that happened to you this week. I would be excited to hear about it if you have it. Last week, we talked about the paralyzed man who was dropped down from the ceiling because he wanted to be healed so badly by Jesus. And we talked about how Jesus cares about our hearts and how he is the only one who can save us, who can heal us from the inside and the outside. And that all we have to do is to show up and Jesus will do all of the work that's needed to heal us. So that was last week. And remember, Matthew, Mark. It's the second book in the New Testament. So today we are going to be reading Mark 2:13 through 21. Remember, I've talked a couple times about how the theme of the book of Mark is that Jesus is king. And last week, we talked about how he was an author and a king. He's the king of the whole of creation. And he is a different kind of king than we expect a king to be. He doesn't have servants, he doesn't have a huge palace, and he doesn't have just a bunch of people doing his bidding. Remember, even at the beginning, we have his herald instead of a whole parade of people who are yelling, "The king is coming, the king is coming," and there's tambourines and dancing. I'm thinking Aladdin, like elephants, and that's how Aladdin made his grand procession. And who did Jesus have? He had John the Baptist, who was a man who ate grasshoppers and honey and wore animal skins, and definitely was not your idea of who you would want to be that herald person. But Jesus is better and very different than what we expect. So this story here is another example of the kind of king Jesus is. So I want you to be thinking about that king idea while we're reading this together. So Mark 2:13 through 21. And I haven't said this, but you should be standing while we read these passages because that's what we do when we read the Word of God. And you don't always have to stand. Like if you're just reading your Bible at home, just you definitely don't have to do that. But we are even if you're just home by yourself, we are in a corporate setting where we are getting together and we are worshiping. And this is kind of like Hub City Kids, even though it's a little bit different. So I would love if you would stand as a family while we read this together. Mark 2:13 through 21. He went out again beside the sea, and all the crowd was coming to him, and he was teaching them. And as he passed by, he saw Levi, the son of Alphaeus, sitting at the tax booth. And he said to him, "Follow me." And Levi rose and followed him. And as he reclined at the table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners were reclining with Jesus and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. And the scribes of the Pharisees, when they saw that he was eating with sinners and tax collectors, said to his disciples, "Why does he eat with sinners and tax collectors?" And when Jesus heard it, he said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but sinners." So pause and think for a minute about, or talk together about what happened in this story. And I'm going to do something kind of crazy today. Ready? Did you miss me? I just disappeared completely. So, what does this teach us about what kind of king Jesus is? We talked last week about Jesus touching the leper, the people with leprosy, and that was something that was considered unclean. And that's kind of like what Jesus is doing right now. Even though they don't have leprosy on their bodies, he is hanging out with people that nobody wants to hang out with. And it might seem kind of silly to us with the people who they are, but it says tax collectors and sinners. So why would a tax collector be one of these people that nobody would want to hang out with? Tax collectors were not very well liked because they worked for the government of the place where they were. This is Capernaum. And they would go to all of the houses and say, you have to pay your tax to the government. And so you have to pay $10 in taxes. And the government is only saying they need to pay $8 in taxes, but the tax collector is saying you need to pay 10. And so all the people would give the tax collectors $10. And guess what would happen with those other two? They'd go right into that tax collector's pocket. So tax collectors were generally not very well liked because they stole from the people. And that meant they were rejected because nobody wanted to be around them because they just stole stuff from people. Ooh, there's that fly right in my face. So, does this sound familiar at all? Do you remember another tax collector in the story? Zacchaeus? What do you remember about Zacchaeus? He was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up into the sycamore tree, and if you have the Jesus Storybook Bible, page 264, you can read about Zacchaeus' story because it's very similar. Zacchaeus wanted to be around Jesus. He wanted so bad to hear what Jesus had to say. He heard and he felt his brokenness in his own heart, and he knew that Jesus was the solution. But nobody wanted to be around Zacchaeus. So Zacchaeus climbed into a tree so that he could see Jesus. And what did Jesus say to him? Come on down, Zacchaeus. I see you. I know you are there. I see your heart, and I'm going to choose your house to have dinner at today. It would be like somebody really famous, a famous musician or basketball player, or I'm thinking, pretend Anna was real, Anna and Elsa, and they're like, hey, there's all these great famous people all right here, and I'm gonna go to your house for dinner. How would that feel? You would feel so loved. You would feel so seen and worthy and probably a little bit scared and nervous. I'm sure that's how Zacchaeus and Levi felt. This is a similar story. So Levi gathered a bunch of people who were like him, who were sinners, and we don't know much about that because we're all sinners, right? So they could be other tax collectors and other people who were rejected by most of the people in their community because they didn't do what was right, even though, of course, all of us do what was not right. Anyway, we know that they were not welcome into the community. And what does Jesus do? He goes and he sits right with them. He eats with them. He's reclining. He's relaxed. He's having a good time. He brought his disciples with him, and they're having a party, and Jesus is hanging out with these people. And how did the Pharisees feel? Remember, Pharisees are supposed to be, they are the religious leaders of that time. They're like the pastors is the easiest way to describe it. They are the people who are responsible for teaching and leading God's people to God. And what did they say to Jesus? They said, what are you doing? They don't even say it to Jesus. They say it to his disciples. How come he's hanging out with those guys? Doesn't he know what he's doing and who they are? And what is Jesus' response? He said, I came to heal the sick, not the healthy. I came to heal the people who want to be healed too. Because normally he calls himself a physician or a doctor. Normally a doctor is somebody that doesn't just go around talking to random people and saying, do you need to be healed? Do you need to be healed? Do you need to be healed? People come to him to be healed. People find the doctor. They go to the doctor and they say, I'm sick and I need you to fix me. And that's what these tax collectors are doing too. Sometimes Jesus goes up to them, but in this case, Jesus actually went up to Levi and said, follow me, just like he did to his disciples, and he got up and followed him. But Jesus sees our hearts. So what does this teach us about Jesus? This is, like I just said, this is like the disciples, he said, disciples, he said, come follow me and I will make you fishers of men. He's kind of saying that same thing to Levi. Come follow me and I will make you collectors of men. Instead of collecting taxes, now he's collecting men to lead them to Jesus. And Levi followed him. Jesus sees our hearts. He sees our greatest sins. He sees our greatest fears, our greatest desires. He sees right into our yuckiest, most shameful, most terrible, most awful, most embarrassing secrets. All those things that we think, I can't tell anybody about this because no one will ever love me if they knew. And guess what? Jesus already knows all of those things. And what's his response to that? Follow me. Let's hang out together. Let's have a party together. Let's eat together and be in community together. His response is to want to be near you. Levi didn't have to say like, Jesus, please come be with me. Come hang out at my house. Please, please, please. No, Jesus said, you. I want to follow you. I see your heart. I see your heart. And I want to be near you. He wants to make you free from all that darkness. And what do we need to do? We need to show up, get up, and follow him. We need to obey him and show up. Is that easy? It's not always. It sounds easy to just stand up and follow him. But Jesus does all the hard work, but we keep trying to take the work back. We keep trying to clean ourselves because it's so hard to believe that it's so easy. It's hard to believe that Jesus sees all that yuckiness and still wants to be with us. Sometimes I see so much yuckiness in me that I don't even want to be with me, but Jesus still does. And guess what? We see that the religious leaders, the people who were supposed to be the ones who knew the most about God and were supposed to be leading God's people to him, were mad at Jesus for healing Levi. They said, why are you hanging out with that guy? He does all sorts of bad things. And what does Jesus say? I know he does bad things, but he wants to heal us anyway. So, since everyone is sick, we only have to admit to Jesus that we are broken and that we are sick and that he wants us that we want him to heal us. That's all it is. We show up and we tell him that we want him to heal us, and he will every single time because he sees us and he loves us. And that is really, really good news. So I hope you have a great week this week, Hub City kids. And I know I will see you soon. We're on the countdown, June 4th. June 6th, June 4th. The first Sunday in June is our first day back here at the space. And I'm so excited to see most of you then. Have a great week. Bye.